Welcome to another edition of Ori Lifestyle Inclusive Beauty Podcast. My name is Titilola Bello, and today I am joined by my childhood friend, Princess Yinka Tekena, who is the CEO of Happy Coffee and a very dear friend of the Ori Lifestyle brand. Today, I'm actually going to be talking about stress and the impact that stress has on your hair health and perhaps your physical health as well. I think it's really, really important for us to kind of take a sit back sometimes and consider how stress is affecting us, because in all our busy lives, as we're rushing around, we tend to think that our body can cope with so many things. And we know that, stress, whether it's stress from a relationship, whether it's stress, financial stress, whether it's even environmental stress, which I don't think a lot of people pay attention to. So living in a very noisy house, living in overcrowded accommodation, and I know that some people are not able to control their environment, but it's important for us to know that these things do have an impact on our health. And as much as possible, we can maybe try and mitigate against those stress. Stress has become something that I am encountering more and more amongst the women who take my hair course. And I'll give you a perfect example. I had an amazing client who took my course for over 6 months, started to take great care of her hair, and then about 18 months post the course, started noticing hair loss. Unfortunately, her family life had taken a big blow, with her mum being diagnosed with an illness that required a life management. And she started to lose her hair in clusters, patches all over the hair. Her edges were lost, and she contacted me again. The good thing was that we knew that it was stress-related. Unfortunately, no products can help with stress-related hair loss. My advice was to double down on those healthy hair practices that she had learned. So just continue the healthy hair practices and then adapt some techniques to help her relax and manage the stress better. So exercise, walking, prioritizing sleep, and believe it or not, eating better. It took about 4 months before she started to see results. About another 4 months later, her hair was almost where it was before. I'm saying all of this to say that stress does have an impact on our hair. Outside of hair care, I tell some people that the weight that they're carrying around their tummy area sometimes is linked to stress. And until they learn to manage stress better, they probably won't see a reduction in that weight gain around the tummy area. Stress can really affect you in ways that you may not realize. Today, we're focusing on hair, and that's why I actually have my childhood friend, the CEO of Happy Coffee, here with me. Welcome, Yinka.
Thank you. Such an amazing pleasure. Seeing where we've come from as children and sitting here today. I'm proud of you. So well done.
So am I. I'm super proud of you, super proud of you. So I really, really want you to take our listeners through your journey. You had amazing locks. Amazing locks. I mean, they were long, full, healthy looking. I was envious of how, and you grew them for a number of time.
Yeah.
And then something happened. I'll let you take us through that journey.
I mean, first, thank you for bringing me on board to sharing my story. I think that a lot of times women don't get the opportunity to share their stories. And when we do, we might not say the complete story because of some social barriers or interpretation of what you're saying your truth might be. So for me, let me start with the locks. I got into it very. It wasn't planned. I mean, I always loved locks. I think as a child, I loved Lauryn Hill. I loved the way her hair looked. So maybe somewhere in my mind, I wanted to lock my hair. But also, when you come from Nigeria, there's a lot of biases to a certain type of hairstyle. But I mean, that didn't stop me. So I think in 2013, a friend of mine was like, you should try locks with your hair. I thought about it back and forth. And then I started locking my hair, my natural hair. And in the beginning, I just thought it was a style that you would just leave and it will grow out. But in the second year, I realized that my locks wasn't doing really good. So I sat with my loctician. I never used any kind of, the pin style. No, she was basically using her hands. And I have really kinky hair as well. And by the time we got to year 5, my hair just started to grow out so perfectly. To use lack of words, in terms of I would wash my hair every month. She would come back and relock it. And once we started more coincides, once I made a decision to start taking care of my locks, then it just started growing out very well. I had 99 locks at that point. They were long. People, would stop me on the road. You start, your hair. And especially people who knew me as a child, it's like, how did your hair grow out this well? So obviously I took a lot of care until one day in 2020, I had just been through a very stressful family issue. I like to say the word, I lost my marriage.
Right.
And you don't realize how tough. Even talking about it, I still get jitters from, thinking of that moment where I cut my hair. Because anybody who knew me knew how attached I was to my locks. It became part of my personality as a person. It drove some part of my intuition or my personality. Let me use the word personality. So the day that I cut my hair was a very emotional day. I had like a major breakdown from the effect of, moving out from my matrimonial home. I was still trying to process the relationship, the break, we had totally broken down all communication. I couldn't reach him at that point. And that day was just like a regular day, but I had a mental breakdown. Let me just put it, I had a mental breakdown and I was in so much pain. I could feel it. My body was, I was in a mess. And I remember my sisters had to bring me back to my room. Then I'd moved back to my parents' house and I was sitting at the, what we call the balcony in Nigeria. And I was sitting on my meditation mat and I just grabbed the scissors and I just started to cut my hair. And I remember one of my sisters rushing in and she saw me cutting my hair. She held the scissors and she was trying to, get me to stop. But I told her that I was fine. But I needed to cut my hair because I was in so much pain. So I felt as though I needed to sacrifice something in place of the pain. And I think I thought if I cut my hair, the pain would, it would be minimal. It wasn't minimal. So I cut my locks. I kept it for a while. I was still in pain, trying to process, when you lose your marriage in Nigeria, it comes with a lot of shame. So let me speak for me. I dealt with a lot of shame. I dealt with a lot of guilt. Maybe did I don't do enough? How was I building a successful business, but I couldn't keep my marriage? I dealt with a lot of, should I keep my last name? So a lot of that was the things that I was battling with. I mean, I had family around me, but I didn't have anybody to talk my emotions through. And everybody knows that I'm also very strong outside. I was the strong girl. So I really didn't have that comfort. And I remember one day I was driving I stopped on 3rd Mainland Bridge. I had my locks in my hand. And the day that I cut my locks, I had the outfit I was wearing. So I tied both of it up. A lot of people don't know this story. I've never shared it publicly. And I stood on 3rd Mainland Bridge and I just stood at the bridge and I felt like maybe if I let the locks go, the pain will also subside because I felt like I was holding on to pain. I felt like, okay, now I've cut the hair, I'm still in pain. Maybe if I let it go, throw it over the bridge and the outfit, I'll feel better. And that was how I let my locks go finally. I felt like maybe I needed a new start. I needed to see life differently. I just wanted to get away from this person so that the pain and the trauma of the relationship that I had just lost would subside. And that was how I started. But it wasn't up until about 6 months later. I was trying to, now I had, after 9 years of growing my locks, I felt like, okay, maybe I start doing something new to my hair. Maybe I'll braid it out, I'll perm it. I was also dealing with an identity crisis. Having had a certain type of hairstyle people had known me with, I was dealing with major identity crisis. So I didn't know how to take care of my hair because I only knew one way. So over the course of the months, I was trying to determine, should I perm it? Should I braid it? So I wake up with all these emotions that I had to go through. And then one day I said, okay, let me braid my hair. So when the lady who wanted to braid my hair was parting through, she realized that I had a big patch at the middle of my crown. And I thought, okay, maybe it was from the pulling and tussling, trying to determine. And the patch kept getting worse. To the point that I had like major patches around my hair. So I remember having to cut off I'd permed my hair at one point as well. So I cut it off and it just had patches. I didn't know what to do. And that was the truth. I didn't know how to deal with it. I knew I was in pain. I knew I was dealing with trauma at that point, but I wasn't sure if my hair was what I needed to tackle. And that's the question. You don't know what to tackle. Are you tackling your mind? Are you tackling the pain? Are you tackling maybe trying to readjust your status as a person as well? So I was dealing with a lot of things, trying to determine what the problem was, until one night I was laying down and I could literally feel, like a movement in my body. Just this thing was just, it will run down, run up, run down. And I remember the word trauma kept, I just kept, it had to be God just telling me trauma. So I went to my phone and Googled trauma and the physical effect of trauma. And I realized that trauma can actually manifest itself physically in your body.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I had no information about that. And it was like a light bulb moment. And so I started to read up on how do you deal with trauma and all of that. And I remember one of the things that they said you could do was massage, that there were trauma massages. So I had a friend who had a company as well who dealt with massage. So I sent her a message. It's about 4 a.m. in the morning, sent her a message like, babe, do you have trauma massage? And she said, this is what God was actually telling her. Not to, drag the story. I think that was my first breather, knowing exactly that this was what I was dealing with. And I needed to tackle that point. And then, the hair thing started growing naturally from there.
Absolutely. So before we talk about how you tackle the hair thing, you spoke about the divorce. You used the term, you lost your marriage, which is a very insightful way to describe it. But we know that a divorce is stressful, traumatic. And then on top of that, you are in a society that, you're right, doesn't necessarily look at divorce as a separation where both parties can go on to build separate and happy lives, hopefully. But it is seen as something shameful.
Absolutely.
And we then internalize that shame. Can you talk a little bit about how that shame felt and how it manifested, even amongst family, friends, the environment that we live in?
Absolutely. I think for me, unfortunately, when we had the back and forth during the relationship, one of the things I was told is, if you leave or if this marriage breaks up, you'll be the one that will be ashamed. So that, when I sit back now, I think about it, it's the narrative that even the men believe that, when you leave and you lose your last name or you lose your marital status, then it's something to be ashamed of. And one of the things that began, and I smile about it because I remember a friend of mine who we shared some thoughts about, and when I was married was, I told her, babe, I don't talk about this, but I lost my marriage. And she's like, you go, girl. And I'm like, okay. okay, easy. Like, I didn't expect that reaction. And those were the reactions that got me back on my feet.
Right.
The fact that there were women who also, maybe not even going through what I was going through, felt like I was and like, you know, when a woman will tell you you're fantastic, you know, you're a beautiful woman, you're this. She said, you will just be fine. Princess, it's you, you'll be fine. Like, you know, she didn't miss her words on me being okay. And that meant a lot. Coming from a woman as well, it meant a lot because she knew who I was. And I think that was how I started to deal with the shame. Yeah. But the shame was like an unspoken reaction to guilt. I think, you know, to take some of it, I felt like I was guilty. I felt I was guilty.
Yeah.
And that guilt was what propagated the shame. Because you feel like, because I was the one that walked away.
And even guilty is stressful.
Yes.
That feeling guilty, because you can't have guilt without feeling responsible. And that feeling of responsibility is a stressor.
Absolutely. Because I was the one who left. So that created that, oh, maybe you shouldn't have.
Yes.
Maybe you should have just talked about it. But I had been talking about it. Yeah. We had been, you know, talking about this, and everything, there was just nothing. Yeah. And if you were close to me, I was always unhappy. So it's like a build-up. Yeah. So I don't think shame just happens. It's a build-up of conversations, things that some things just imprint themselves in your subconscious. Yeah. And I think I dealt with that. So for so many years, I was unhappy in the relationship. And so when I left, you would think that should have been a victorious, thing. Like, you know, I left a situation that was not given. It wasn't giving me what I needed emotionally or whatever. Yeah. No, I walked out and I still felt like, oh, I should have stayed. I'm the woman. And because I'm also Christian, you know, when the Bible says it's a woman that builds the home, a terrible woman is the one that tears her home down. You're dealing with religion. Yes. You're dealing with Christianity. You're dealing with what my mother... And, you know, for me, I had an amazing family. I mean, they did their own path. You know, they tried their best. But there were some things they also did that, you know, they tried to mend the relationship. And I think that also cost me more trauma. Because, let me give an example. He was on our WhatsApp group for years. So I wouldn't be able to post without feeling like, oh, he's reading my post. Yeah. My family felt, oh, let's just keep him there. That cost me a lot of trauma as well. And until I was able to rectify that position, after 2 years later, in the separation, like, he can't be on this group. I can't be myself.
He can't be in the family WhatsApp group because you can't be yourself and because it's causing you stress.
It was costing me.
So you cut the locks off.
Yes.
And you're right. I would have thought you cut the locks off. That in itself would have been traumatic.
Yes. I didn't even know that itself was causing me even more stress because I was so attached to my hair. Yeah. Everybody who knew me knew I treated my hair with a lot of respect. Yeah. I didn't even call them dreadlocks. I used to call my hair grace locks.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would wash it. She would tend to it. She would cut it. She would dye. She, you know, I cared for me.
They were beautiful.
Yes, I cared for my hair. So I didn't even realize that was even causing me stress. When I cut it off, I didn't add that stress to the stress that I was going through.
Yes.
I didn't add it. I think I was also shying away from talking. And then when I would post and people would be like, okay, she cut her hair. Something must have gone wrong.
I must admit that when I saw the image first, and I saw the cut first before you told me what happened, my instinct said, you're going through a breakup. Yeah. And I don't know, probably it's that stereotypical, when you see a woman cut her hair, she's about to change her life. But I saw it first and I was, Yinka cut. Yeah.
I didn't even see cutting my hair as an option. So imagine going through that kind of transition. And it wasn't because I hated my hair. I loved so I was betting if I would cut my hair, I was gambling. If I cut my hair, I'll be happier. I would sacrifice for love or whatever it was. No.
So the patches.
Yes.
Did you go and see anybody at all?
No.
No.
I didn't. Because I didn't even know I needed to see someone.
Yeah. And that is another thing. I always say the minute you see patches, please go and see somebody. Yours was a little bit easier because it was directly related to the stressful period that you were going through.
Yeah.
How did your hair begin to recover?
Such things happened as well that I think I would touch on. Is I entered early menopause because of the stress as well.
So, I did not know that.
Yes. Mine was because I internalize everything. If it's love, if it's work, it's the way I'm passionate about coffee and my business and my son. It's just the way I am. So everything just literally stopped. I went to the doctors for that and they were like, it's real. The only thing that they would consider is putting me on medication if I wanted birth to have children in the future.
How old were you?
I was 42 when it happened, 42, 43.
Yeah.
It started gradually and it just ceased at one point. Yeah. So I thought, okay, let me see a doctor for this. I thought, okay, I saw a doctor and he was like, it's gone.
Yeah.
But if I think that I want children, and because I've never considered having more children, it's not, if I would have, I would adopt or whatever. So I was like, it's fine. Obviously, early menopause, it's in itself gives your body a lot of hormonal imbalances as well. Hot flashes. I was dealing with a lot of with sweats. I still sweat a lot now. Headaches. I was dealing with a lot of headaches and so many things. So imagine top, then the stress. So I had those patches that were white. My hair I'd never seen my hair that way. Is what, Yoruba, they call like lakpa type of thing. That's the only word I could use. But one thing was I wasn't afraid. I knew that this wasn't a medical condition. I knew what it was. And the first thing that I did was I went to your page, funny enough, because I knew the only person in my circle that talked about hair a lot was you. So I went to your page and I think the first thing I read was hydrating my hair. And I also think that over the years, because I also did locks, I didn't know how to care for my...
Of course, naturally, because you were learning to care for locks, which is different from learning to care for loose hair.
Absolutely, hair. Yeah. So I didn't know how to care for my hair. But the first thing I knew that I needed to stop was adding any form of relaxing agents in my hair. That was the first thing I came to terms with.
Yeah.
You cannot add chemical to your hair.
Yeah.
And also because you had talked extensively about, chemical and how it affects our body composition as women and all of that. So first I tell myself, you can't perm your hair, you need to so I cut it all off. That's the first thing. I went back. For a while, I was bald for about maybe 4 or 5 months. So I went through a lot of, like I said, I was dealing with a lot of identity crisis. So the time I was bald for a while. And then people would stop me. And I also wear black. So people thought my husband had died. I was mourning, blah, blah, blah. People would stop me and they were, sorry, madam. So I was still trying to determine. Then I went to wigs. But before then, I cut it off. I started hydrating my hair. I, went to purchase a proper shampoo. Just little things. I learned from you, always hydrate your hair. Make sure there's always oil. There's always a hair cream. And literally, that's how I started. And in a space of 8 months, I sent you the picture.
You sent me the pictures. Let's talk about that. So I think it was one Sunday morning, I woke up and I saw the pictures of the patches first. That's what I saw first. And I thought, I don't know, again, I thought, you're very stressed. And you know why I thought you're very stressed, actually? I thought it was business. I thought it was the business because this is a really harsh business environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we talk business, and I know that, we've been talking about raising capital, investment, growing the brand.
Yes.
We talk about all those things. So I thought it was business-related stress.
Yeah.
And I was getting a little bit nervous because I thought you were going to ask, what product should I use? And I already had a long answer. That this is not about products. This is really about you learning to manage stress. But I know how Lagos can be.
Yeah.
And I thought, how am I going to tell Yinka that she needs to exercise 4 days a week, when I know what your schedule, I mean, we've spent some time around each other on this trip, and I know what your schedule is like. You're managing staff, you're doing, sorting out your admin, you're still going for meetings with investors. And I know how hectic it is. But I knew that I would have to at some point tell you that this is about managing stress. This is about finding your quiet times. Absolutely. I loved earlier when you said you had a meditation mat, and I guess this is one of the things that I want to kind of really impact on people, that everybody can find something to do to help them manage stress.
Absolutely.
For some people, it's even cooking by yourself, without your children in the kitchen sometimes, just taking some time alone, sometimes meditating, sometimes in prayer.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you pray, you then surrender and leave everything to God, which is a stress relief in of itself.
Absolutely.
So when you sent me those pictures, I thought, I think you guys are really stressed. This is not about product. But then almost immediately,
the other picture came.
The other pictures came through. Tell me about the other pictures.
So, 2 things. On this journey, I also developed a high blood pressure, pre-high blood pressure moment or times or season or whatever. It was just bad. I think one day I broke down. I said, God, I was sorry for putting myself in this kind of position. Obviously, I'd gained a lot of weight as well. I wasn't sure if I was eating well. It wasn't, I have my son to take care of. So I was putting everybody ahead of myself. And they tell us, put yourself first, but it just doesn't happen. You want to, but one day I broke down. I said, God, if I get my blood pressure down and I will take care of myself. Anybody who knows me now, 10 o'clock, I am snoring.
Yeah.
Sleep is so underrated.
Completely underrated.
I think when we think sleep, we think it's just closing your eyes. Even if as much as closing your eyes. So first thing I started to do, I started to read up on sleep. And because I told myself, even if I put myself on medication or whatever, how long am I going to do that for? So I started reading up. If you know me very well, I'm always on the internet, just surfing for information. I'm like a whole ball of information. I started reading on sleep. And I realized that 10 o'clock to 12, if you can get yourself to sleep at those moments, it's one of the best times to help repair.
Yeah, absolutely correct.
So I realized that I'd done a lot of damage and I needed to repair. And this repair, I had to do it by myself. So I had to force myself. So what I'll do is I'll come up early enough, get my son to sleep. And I also, as a mom, one of the things that I did to myself was to get my son to sleep early. So he sleeps at 7:30. And when they're awake, you really can't concentrate. It's mommy this, mommy that. And because he's growing, he's very inquisitive. So 7:30, everybody knows, max 8 o'clock, Christian is sleeping. So that means that I have 2 hours for to myself. Wind down, put things in place, send my messages, check my emails. And I stop picking calls at night as well.
Perfect.
And the reason is because if you pick some calls, they just make your thoughts wander. You're just someone just come and tell you something that'll just throw you off.
Absolutely.
And then 10 comes, you can't sleep. So I have a cutoff time for calls, except for family, or I think is very, even my team, they know, send me a WhatsApp message. If I wake up at 4 or 5, I'll look at it, I'll check my email. So I started to go to bed early.
Yep. I preach that.
I was doing 10 to 6. Someone said, you sleep 10 to 6. I said, yes. Yeah. I sleep 10 to 6. And if I'm not sleeping at 10, it's because maybe I go home late because of traffic.
Yes.
But I will still catch up on sleep. So I have a sleep place where I write the sleep that I lose. So I tell myself, you are owing yourself 2 hours of sleep. So you need to sleep.
But can I tell you that something? You can't catch up on sleep.
No.
It doesn't work that way. So you should be as consistent as possible. You said something that is really powerful. I don't think a lot of people know that it is best actually to really get to bed between that 10 and 12.
Yes.
Before, sleeping after 12 is not so great.
Not so great.
It's not optimal, but you're absolutely correct.
Absolutely. I started eating less. I started reducing my cutoff time for eating as well. Because the more you leave your food in your digestive system, you stress on your heart as well.
It's harder to sleep. And I'm a late eater, so I'm not even going to say that I'm perfect when it comes to sleep.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that I'm trying to tidy up is not eating as late as I usually do.
Absolutely.
So you're correct.
So in a few months, I started realizing my headaches were minimal, almost zero. I didn't lose any weight at that point. You think about, no, for me, then my blood pressure went down, just absolutely down. Whenever I have extra funds, I would schedule a massage for myself. I started taking care of me. So I got someone to also cook for me as well, because cooking was something that I loved when I was married. And it caused a bit of issue as well. So I lost my love for cooking after I left. A lot of people, so I stopped cooking. I stopped totally cooking. I just didn't want to be in the kitchen.
Because it reminded you of...
Like, why would somebody say that when everybody knew that cooking was something I loved to do?
Wow.
It was one of my love languages as well.
It's mine.
Yes.
It's one of mine. Like, if you know me well, giving gifts is not my love language.
You've been cooking for us even as teenagers.
Exactly.
You used to cook for us like when we were knee high. So.
Exactly. So if I cook for you, that is me loving you. That is how I express my love.
Absolutely.
I cannot rate you, or that's how I love. So
Absolutely.
I can understand how that would be affected.
So imagine that one was also stressful because I didn't want to cook. So I got somebody to help me cook. So I had a timetable. I started reducing my cutoff time. I'm sure some of the things you're hearing also for the first time today as well, some of these things that I'm sharing. And that began to help me heal my body. And in a few months...
but I actually didn't know that you enjoyed cooking. Like, everyone... Can you please tell everyone how long I've been cooking for and how great of a cook I am? Because it really annoys me that some people think I can't cook. I don't get it.
I remember when we skunked Bagada.
Yes.
After FGGC Oyo, you would cook a spread. Like, literally.
And we were how old?
We're 16, 17. You used to cook... So you cooked, for all I care, you only... If you had come out with a restaurant or... I wouldn't have been surprised.
You would have been surprised.
I wouldn't have been surprised at all. And I still look forward to your cooking. So
you got someone to cook for you.
So now I have someone who cooks for me and my son. Once in a while, I will go and throw down something for him. Because one of the feedback that I got from people trying to mend the bridge was, he said you didn't used to cook. And that threw me off.
Right.
Because I always was in the kitchen. Okay, so I found out that I wasn't cooking what he thought he liked.
Right.
And because my palate is very sweet as well. Having lived in America, I love my food sweet. So I used to put honey in the food as a...
Do you marinate chicken with honey? Like, it's an American thing. Oh,
yes,
my God.
Like my food. Even till now, the guy who cooks for me knows that I like my food. If he makes me like a sauce, it has to be sweet. Life is sweet. So I like my food sweet. I'm like, oh, well, you should have married a girl who lived in America if you knew you wanted whatever. Well, moving on. So I began to see great changes. And I think the sleep was the most critical. I know, because for an adult, sleeping 8 hours can be tough.
But it's necessary. People don't realize how important sleep is for being productive. Like, people think it's just an indulgence.
Yeah,
It's not just rest or repair. It is absolutely necessary for your brain power.
Absolutely.
Especially with running a business.
Yes. And because, my business, I'm literally building a value chain in Nigeria. I run a coffee brand and company. I do a lot of work in advocacy. I'm doing almost everything. I'm speaking on behalf of coffee in Nigeria, in Africa. I have to think through the process. People are looking up to me. I mentor people. So for me, all of that, I have to tell myself, look, if I'm going to go on this journey for a long haul, I need to be able to take care of my body to be able to give me what I need to be. There were times, I think it was 2001, in 2021, when I began to change a lot of I had only 1 hour talking time. So during the day, and because then I was still dealing with my blood pressure issue. Okay, so if I talk, after about 30 minutes, my heart would be racing. So I had a 1 hour talk time daily. Anything after 1 hour, I wasn't going to talk.
Right.
So I wasn't talking about anything. Even at work, they knew to always send me messages. So this is one of
Wait, so I'm no, sorry. I
the
need
whole
to
day,
understand
I only
that.
had 1 hour talk time.
1 hour, you could only talk for 1 hour.
So if I talk to you for 10 minutes, I only had 15 minutes left to talk. In the whole day. And it didn't matter who he was. I wasn't going to say anything. I couldn't, this conversation, at a point I couldn't have this kind of conversation without having my heart race, feeling uncomfortable, uneasy.
Wow.
Breathing heavily. I couldn't. My heart would sometimes just sink. So I had a 1 hour talk time.
Wow.
I wouldn't be able, for the whole day. So it didn't matter what it was.
Do you know, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
But also, I've heard of people who go on sleep retreats. Silent retreats, where they don't talk for maybe a whole weekend. Some people even do up to a week, where there will be no talking. And I've heard it can be so rejuvenating for the spirit and the mind to just not communicate for a length of period of time.
Absolutely. Because mine was more, nobody told me about it. I just knew because of the kind of reactions I would get from my body. So I knew that I couldn't talk past 1 hour. So my son, he knew I was very quiet. Then I wasn't doing a lot of going out. I wasn't doing a lot of events as well, because I needed to pick up. I remember one of the meetings that I had after I got my separation. It was our New Year meeting in Happy Coffee. I remember entering the New Year meeting with the team. And I wanted to just address them, and I just started crying. I cried for 30 minutes. The meeting stopped. And when I finished, and I said, if there was a year you wanted to leave Happy Coffee, I beg you not to leave this year. I need you guys. This is the year that I need you guys to step in up for me, just help me. And that was, the meeting ended. We went for lunch and...
I want to pause there.
Yeah.
I can feel goosebumps because it sounds like the kind of thing that I would say. And I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. In 2020, I went through an emotional roller coaster with friendship breakups. So I lost my best friend, and my friendship with a few other friends really broke down, and I'm not really going to go into it. But one of the things that hurt me the most was because a particular friend could see all of what was happening around me. And it was at that time that they chose as well to do something that I consider to be an utmost betrayal. So the minute you said what you said, I could just put myself in your shoes.
Yeah.
And I can imagine myself saying, I could feel that emotion of, this is not the time for you to leave me, because I felt everything that you felt when that person did what they did.
Absolutely.
I felt even more betrayed. And I think in my mind, I know that I can never go back to that person again, because you saw everything that was happening around me, and you chose that time to do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that happened with a couple of people in my life. And I think also as a leader, or as a, because I lead in my industry, one of the things I allow myself to be vulnerable. And we don't see a lot of that. We don't see it as strength. I allowed myself to be vulnerable. I had friends who had to step in with my business. I know a friend who said, you're not going to lose your business. He paid up my taxes. People just, and I think at that point, you need those things.
Support.
Yes. And, support it sometimes, even in the silence of just allowing this person to... I was very fortunate. And I was even more fortunate that I had a home to go back to, a family home.
Yes.
Because sometimes, even when you're in that situation... the name of my brand is Happy Coffee. And I wasn't happy. Yeah. And it was too long and too extended. I think if it was just a regular, you did this and then everybody just, sorry, No, I was perpetually unhappy. I like to use that word because it was such an extended time. And I don't speak for, the other side, but I guess he was unhappy as well.
Yeah.
But, I can only speak for me. I was unhappy. I knew I was unhappy, but I thought it would end. And then when I didn't see an end, and also because I felt I was misjudged. And I'm easily misjudged as well.
Yes.
People think of me a certain way, but they expect me to be this way. But I'm not even any of those two things. I am very, in the face of anything. And a lot of things that I've been through as a child, growing up, losing my dad, my sister.
Can we maybe pause there? Because you used the word trauma a lot. And I don't associate you with trauma. Like, it's true. It was only in the car when we were coming and you were talking about something and you said, remember, I've suffered 2 significant losses.
Yeah.
If you want to, do you want to say a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, we're talking stress here, and I think some of it lingers as well.
Yes.
And we pile it on.
Yes.
And then until we reach that breaking point. When I was 16, when we just left Oyo, I had a very doting dad. Everybody knew my dad. I remember we were supposed to go for the
carnival. We were supposed to... I'll let you tell the story.
Yes, we were supposed to go for the carnival. You had come dressed up. I'll never forget.
Sorry. London, can you say which carnival it is?
Yes, it was London Notting Hill Carnival.
Yes.
It was in 1994. Yeah. We had come to London with my dad, my siblings. We came and you were supposed to pick me up for us to go. And just a few days, I couldn't even reach you. A few days from that day, before that day, my dad had just been brutally killed in Nigeria.
He was assassinated.
That word... It's the first time I'm using it.
Oh.
Yes. I will use every word he was killed, but I'd never used, because that is what it was.
That's what it was.
It was. And Titi you came into the door and I remember you dropping your bag. You just literally held me on. And
do you know, I've never, ever gone to the carnival. And I actually never knew why I've never been to the carnival. But that must be why I've never been to the carnival till today.
Yeah, because you came to take me to, and I'm literally just remembering that experience now. You were in an orange dress, if I can remember.
I remember.
Yes, and it was
awful.
Trauma. It was awful. Because we also had a dad who was doting.
He was so involved in your life. He was so
involved. We talked to him about everything. And then dad just suddenly and I'm first of 6 children. My mom it was a mess. It was a mess. And then we had to go back to Nigeria. My mom had to identify his body. And also because at the burial, we couldn't look at him because one of the bullets hit him on the left side of his face. So he lost this. So we couldn't... there were just so many parts moving. We were too young, and that...
I'm really sorry. I just resonate so much because my dad died at 6. I know that I've internalized a lot of stress, but I also know that one of the things that affected me the most was we never saw a body because his family buried him before we got to Ondo, and we were traveling from Ibadan to Ondo, and he was buried before we got there. He wasn't Muslim. Another story for another day. Yeah. But even that leaves some sort of trauma because you never really said goodbye. And so even for many years, I fantasized that he actually didn't die. He was coming back.
That's significant because I remember when we were at the church and my dad was there in church lying down and something would say, maybe he would just get up and say, oh, I didn't die. Because that's how my dad was. He was very doting. He was involved with our lives. So a lot of that I carried with me. I remember in London when they told us I was the only one everybody was worried about because I wasn't crying. I was, I was just... I didn't believe it as well until we got to Nigeria and I saw the obituary and I said, okay, he's really dead. Then I cried a bit, but I still held on, roughing my way. And you know how I found my way to America as well. It was a very stressful 9 years as a young Nigerian, move. That's why I tell people, I can't live abroad again. And I think it's also part of the trauma as well. Because when I was 21, I went with $140, no mommy, no daddy. I took 2 suitcases. I got admission by myself. When I got to New York, the person who was supposed to pick me up didn't show up. So I had to find my way to South Carolina. Went through different schools. I had to do odd jobs, It was just very stressful.
And traumatic.
Such that when I graduated in 2009 in May, by August I was back in Nigeria. I took a one-way flight. My mom was like, Kilo Shelle, why are you going back? People were worried. Like, is she going to die? They say when people want to die, they do all these funny things. Because people thought after everything you've been through, you should be here,
and stay.
Getting married, go get a job. Because I graduated first class. No. I think I was so traumatized. I said I was going back home. And I took a one-way ticket back to Nigeria. And I've been back ever since.
Yeah.
Because I think I was always also too far away from home. I didn't see my siblings for 9 years. Because I didn't have my papers, I couldn't do so many things. So for me, coming back home was home. I just wanted to come back home. And then 6 years later, I lost my immediate junior sister to childbirth.
Yeah.
She died at childbirth as well.
Yeah.
So all of that. And then because she died the morning after she had a baby, I needed to step in as a mom for my nephew, who is now my son. Yes. So I didn't have time to grieve. Yes. I couldn't cry. You
became a mom overnight.
Overnight. So there was my marriage was also early. I think those are one of the things that impacted our relationship as well. Because I'm also head-on strong about things, I wasn't looking at the impact. I just said, this child needs me now. He needs me. And I just, took him from the hospital. We came home. That I think also added some stress to our marriage as well.
Yeah.
Because it was something we talked about. We didn't even talk about all of that. My own was, look, he needs me and he needs me now. So I just started up, became a mother, started doing the 2 o'clock, 2 hours sleep, feeding, waking up. Because my sister also died, him dying also was a fear that I carried.
Of course.
So I wake up every hour just making sure he was still breathing, because he had breathing issues when he was born. So there were things I just was battling with. And guess what? I just started Happy Coffee when this happened. So I had to stop my business for 7 months, making sure he was fine. Then I had to pick up from there. So I lost traction as well as a company. Then I started again. So I think a lot of that, impacted my, my life as a person.
Absolutely. You said something that the trauma of losing your dad early, the trauma of losing your sister, the trauma of losing your marriage. We internalize all of that when we don't process it properly.
Absolutely.
And part of processing that properly sometimes is going for therapy, counseling, something that is not accessible to everybody. Absolutely. And certainly not widespread in this culture.
Absolutely.
Would you have sought counseling and therapy if you had realized that those traumatic experiences were being stored up in the body?
Absolutely. I would have done, where I was, I cut my hair because I was looking for solace.
Yes.
So I would have considered options that was available to me. And the kind of pain you feel when you lose a parent or a sibling or a marriage or anything, you can't really even tell how it feels or how, because people would internalize it differently and express it differently as well. I think that expression now comes in maybe in form of therapy or massage or going for anything.
So do you do counseling or therapy? Have you? I haven't, but I've really considered that.
What I'm doing with
one.
you right now is therapeutic on its own. So
I have said one or two things that I've never shared. Yeah. So I know that talking is a strong, powerful therapeutic outlet. My hope is that more of us will seek counseling, even if these things, we think that they happened decades ago.
Absolutely.
I still find myself crying sometimes over things that happened in my childhood.
Yeah.
I still think that I would go for therapy. I tried last year. I just didn't think I had a good match. I think I will still go for one. Do you
Yeah.
think you would ever?
Yes, I think what it is for me is, okay, at the beginning of this podcast, I remember the first opening, I was a bit, it was a bit dull in terms of, because I was reliving some of those moments. And I think it's because I'm sitting before a friend, and also because someone who is not judgmental.
Right.
And in our environment, people are judgmental.
Right. That's true.
So even if I sat in front of a therapist, I need to be sure this person will not judge me. Like Martin Luther said, not by the color of my skin or by my challenges or my mishaps, but by the content of my character.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is very critical. So for me, yes, professional therapy is something that I will consider, especially because I also have a very extended, ambitious dream.
Yes, this is why. Yinka, but this is exactly why. I think that getting therapy is tied into me breaking through my next level. I actually think so, because I feel that sometimes there are things that are locked that you need to unlock to free yourself, to really push yourself to that next level.
Absolutely. And trauma is something that we need to talk about in terms of how it's stored in our body. I think it might also be stored in our DNA.
It's true. No, there's loads of research to back that out now, that we can transfer it to the next generation and the next generation.
Absolutely. So a lot of those things are the things that I now sit with. I sit with myself a lot.
Yeah, me too. And with my emotions.
I sit with myself.
Yeah.
I lost a lot of friends on the journey as well.
I have lost loads of friends. Loads and loads of friends.
Yes, and one of the things that I also dealt with was anger.
Yeah.
I was such an angry child. Like, I used to have, my mom and I would fight about, you can't be a Christian and always be angry. I was just angry. I would be angry about things. I would throw a tantrum. I'll get to points I can't even talk because I'm so angry. Now, I realize that nothing even phases me anymore because I sit with myself.
Yes, you sit with your emotions. Yinka, you're hitting so many things that has been so helpful. When I'm sad, I acknowledge that I'm sad and I sit with that sadness. Absolutely. And, I can be very animated. I can be very playful. When we were going out yesterday, I'll run into the room, shake my
your tail feather.
Shake my tail feather, tell all of you guys to kind of just deal with the fact that I love nudity and I'm walking around naked. That is who I am.
Yeah.
But I have found that we also sometimes live in a society where our anger is, people want to put a lid on our anger.
Yeah.
People want to put a lid on our sadness.
Yes.
They want us to rush through these emotions because they want us to get to happy quickly, and it doesn't help.
And anger is an emotion. It's not negative.
Absolutely.
It's an expression.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, I remember telling my mom that I choose to keep my anger. Because it's pushed me to, not destructive, throwing things around, but when I'm angry, I realize that I'm able to double up my passion, whatever.
I agree.
It's what helps me go through being empathetic as well with people. Because when I get to a situation, I remember a situation when Nigeria was going through the NSAS moment, and I was angry because people had just been shot and somebody was asking for a bag of rice. And I'm like, are you not seeing what's going on? And I was like, I'm always angry. I said, because you can't even lead a country without having a level of anger towards the ills in the society.
Absolutely.
You can't just be passive.
Absolutely.
So anger foils a level of, it projects your level of, strength to be able to conquer, or whether you need to get things done. You need a level of anger to move you. So when we talk about anger, we just think about an angry bird. No.
I 100% agree, and I'll tell you why I agree. 2 examples. It was anger that made me start the charity Path to Possibility. Just the anger over the social injustice of seeing millions of Nigerian children out of school. The highest number of children out of school in the world is in Nigeria. It is that anger that made me start the charity. It is actually the anger about how natural hair is perceived that made me partly start the brand.
Absolutely.
So I agree with you that anger can be channeled into something positive.
And very
we
progressive.
shouldn't, and very progressive. And we
And
shouldn't
not demonize being
we shouldn't
angry.
demonize it or shy away from it. We should actually sit with it,
Yes.
but channel it properly.
Absolutely. And being able to express it also, it's the control on how you express your anger and where you channel it to. So for me, I always tell my mom, be fortunate you have a child who is like this. Because if I'm going to champion the cause of this nation, which is one of my biggest ambitions in this world, I have to be angry.
Your ambition, can we talk about that? So not only are you a mom, do you run Happy Coffee? And I know that you see Happy Coffee being an international brand.
Absolutely.
You now have aspirations of leading this country.
Absolutely. And this has been knee-high. It's been, as
No,
a
I've
teenager-
heard you say it before. It's not the first time.
Some people think I just started saying I want to be president now. No, I've been saying it since I was a teenager because I look at it like God put that desire there. I tell people, how many women have you met in your lifetime who wants to run for the office of the president? None. Maybe none. It's just like Happy Coffee. A lot of people don't even know that people do coffee. Is coffee a business? Can you do business
In
with coffee
Nigeria?
in Nigeria? And I didn't even pick coffee. It wasn't as though I woke up and said, I'm going to do something that nobody else is doing. No, it just happened. And it's been like the same thing. When I think about leadership, when I think about Nigeria,
Yeah.
I have an immense passion for this country.
I love this country. It
It's-
breaks my heart, but I love it at the same time.
Love Nigeria. I will not move abroad. People say, don't say that. I can't leave abroad, not because it's not beautiful. I would encourage people to go if you want to, search for the golden fleece, fine. But for people like us who are here, I truly believe that this continent will be developed by Africans.
I 100%
Nigeria will be developed by
agree.
Nigerians. We will create solutions by a Nigerian
Yes.
for the Nigerian consumer to the world. So in my future, when I have finished building the most successful brand out of Africa in coffee, I will run for the office of the president.
Amen.
And when that time comes, everybody listening will remember that I said so.
Yep.
You will get your voting cards.
Yes, and you will be.
TT will write checks, campaign checks, and we will go out there because Africa
we'll
needs
campaign.
Yeah, Africa needs leadership. And leadership, it's not gender driven.
Absolutely
It's
correct.
just someone that loves, that internalizes the resources that we have, and how can we apply it to ensuring that our lives are just amazing as a
Amazing.
continent. Yeah.
This has been a beautiful conversation for me.
Yeah.
This has been partly also a healing conversation
Yes.
for me. I've had the opportunity to say one or two things that I've not said publicly, and hopefully I will get to expand on in future. But before we wrap this up, I want you to maybe just give 3 tips to somebody who's going through a very, very stressful period. What are your top 3 tips?
First is, if I'll speak as an entrepreneur, I think one of the things that you need to do is you need to understand what you're doing to the eyes of the value chain that you're in. I say that very freely. So if you are in the hair care industry, for example, like Ori Lifestyle, you're in the retail arm of that business, that means that the impact that you want to create resonates with the customer. So you're going to be touching on the customer. For example, in Happy Coffee, we're a coffee solution company. Don't let anybody push you around on your journey. Because when you take your idea to someone, they say, "I know you should be doing it this way," or "Do it that way." And because of that, a lot of people have lost the original vision. You see, that vision that got you to start is the original vision. Just cream it, fine-tune your vision. And it's because a lot of people don't know exactly what they're doing that they end up being very stressed.
Yeah, right.
Because if you know what you're doing and you're sticking to what you're doing, what would happen is you will go through the stress, but it will not be super impactful. You will know that this is for a reason, and I'm sticking to that purpose. I've had people in the beginning of my business, "Oh, you should do juice, do that. Oh, add coffee." 9 years later, we're still what we said we are. We're a Nigerian coffee brand. We're creating coffee-centered solutions around coffee. This is who we are. And you can't, if you come to Happy Coffee, you cannot miss our vision. We want to, like I told you, we want to give people coffee at a great price point.
So sticking to vision
Stick to it.
helps with stress reduction.
Absolutely.
Because you're not being pulled in different
Different
directions.
You're
Wow.
not. So that does. And secondly, sleep. I can't, like I said, don't underestimate sleep. You need to sleep. If you need to take naps, take it. One of my dream businesses is having a sleep pod.
I
said once we're ready to have our full out-blown experience center, I imagine it being like a tall building. So one of the levels would be a sleep pod where people can just come and take a 1 hour deep sleep in a pod. You sleep. Don't die in your sleep though. I cannot speak English. Just come and sleep for 1 hour. Because someone will wake up and be like,
what? That was an intrusive thought that you allowed to come out.
Lord, help your child.
Okay, so sleep.
Sleep, very important.
I agree.
Take your sleep very seriously.
I agree.
And thirdly, it goes back to life as well. That don't be too hard on yourself. Just, things will happen. Yes. Nobody knows. Titi and I have been friends. We've been friends since we're in high school. We lived in the same dormitory.
Yeah.
The way our lives have turned out. If anybody told us when we're in high school that we'll be drinking our own coffee or using our own hair product.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that people are doing and I never even imagine. I mean, makeup artists who thought if my child comes and says, I want to be a makeup artist, I'm not going to be now pulling my hair.
Yeah.
No, don't take life too seriously. And be on your journey, be happy. Whatever happiness means to you, whatever brings out your 32, do it.
I'll add 2 things to that.
Yeah.
Lean into support, find the support, and lean into good support system. And finally, connect spiritually to God.
Yes.
And that does not apply to any religion, but absolutely understanding that there is something bigger than us.
Yes.
That our lives is more fulfilling when we serve a higher purpose.
Yes, absolutely.
I would definitely encourage people to find that spiritual connection to God.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me over. I had an amazing time.
Of another episode where I take one of your hair care questions. So this one goes, Dear Titi, I often admire women with their natural hair looking jet black. Do you advise I dye my hair to achieve that look? This is a really interesting question because I feel exactly like you do. I want my hair to look jet black too. And if you want to dye your hair jet black, I'd say, yeah, do it. Enjoy it. And you know what? I'll say that because dyeing your hair jet black, we know is not as stressful on your hair strands like going to a color like a blonde, for example, or bleaching your hair. So if you want to enjoy being a jet black girl, woman, do that. But do understand that, of course, it comes with some consequences as well. I'm assuming that you're going to use a traditional, conventional hair dye. And if that is the case, you may notice some dryness to your hair. This is because the process of dyeing your hair is introducing an element of damage to your hair bonds. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. It just means that when you do dye your hair, you then need to stay on top of the hair care. Conditioning becomes extremely important. So deep condition regularly, use a very rich leave-in conditioner for your hair, and just make sure that other treatments that may be harsh on your hair strands, you minimize that. So if you dye your hair, don't start blow drying it or straighten it every other day. You've already introduced one type of damage. Eliminate or reduce significantly other damaging things to your hair. Enjoy the jet black hair. I may join you too.